4.9 magnitude earthquake strikes Haiti, claiming at least 4 lives.
Authorities say several children were rushed to the hospital after 2 houses collapsed from tremors. More details on this later in the news. Good evening, I am Gianna Llanes.
I am Nina Richie Alago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Now for the headlines.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. reaffirms Philippines' neutrality. FIVOX warns Albay of Mayon's possible eruption. Taiwan raises air defense amid China-Russia drills. World Bank estimates Kakhovka Dam damages, and CNN Chief Executive Chris Licht ousted as chairman.
Ottawa announces it is setting up an Indo-Pacific Agricultural Office in Manila for trade and business in the region. According to the Canadian Ministry of Agriculture, the office will prove opportunities to hone the economic ties between Manila and Ottawa. Canadian Foreign Minister Melanie Joly previously shared Ottawa's plans to increase its diplomatic presence in the Philippines as the core of its regional strategy. The Indo-Pacific Agriculture and Agri-Food Office will serve as a joint venture between the region and Canada. The cooperation will be staffed by a mobile team that will be tasked with Canadian diplomatic missions. Foreign Affairs Secretary Enrique Manalo reaffirms that the office will serve as a vital role in enhancing technical partnerships. In 2022, Canada's agriculture and agri-food exports in the Indo-Pacific reached almost $22 million. Canada has already established trade agreements with the countries South Korea, Australia, Japan, Malaysia, New Zealand, Singapore, and Vietnam.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. receives the letter of credence from the new ambassador-designate of the Republic of Singapore to the Philippines. Bernadette Manuel for the details.
Her Excellency Constance C. Shin Yuan presents a letter of credence to President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. in Malacanang Palace. Ambassador-designate Yuan shares her plans to venture into new areas of the bilateral cooperation between the Philippines and Singapore during the ceremony. The President reaffirms the strong bilateral relations between the two republics. He notes that deepening bilateral partnership is vital, especially during this period of transition in the global economy. The diplomatic ties between the two countries were established in 1969 and soon will mark their 55th anniversary in 2024. Bernadette Manuel reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. compliments Ambassador Ejana Sediva for the endeavor that the envoy has poured over the country for years. Ambassador Sediva concludes her diplomatic posting in the Philippines since January 15, 2019, when she presented a letter of credence to former President Rodrigo Duterte. The envoy recently held the book launching of Kaibigan, Pratel Zek, Philippine Cultural and Diplomatic Dialogue, which was collaborated by Filipino and Czech writers and scholars. The book honors the firm friendship between the two countries. The Philippines and Czech Republic will mark their 50 years of diplomatic relations this October.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. calls on Filipino envoys to constantly eye for non-traditional partners in trade, security, and defense for the country. Vin Pascua for the report.
7 newly confirmed Filipino ambassadors gathered at the Malacanang Palace with President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. to discuss the global situation amid post-pandemic economic recovery. The president notes that his administration does not favor the views of any other countries in terms of foreign policy. He adds that the envoys should explore and discuss initiatives that benefit the country and its people. According to the president, his administration is now prioritizing the areas of agriculture, energy, infrastructure development, and digitalization. Ambassadors Carlos Soreta, Henry Bensurto Jr., Raul Hernandez, Renato Pedro Villa, Maria Angela Ponce, Paul Raymond Cortez, and Josel Ignacio were present at the meeting. Vin Pascua reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The newly appointed Health Secretary Teodoro Herbosa pushes healthcare reforms in the country. J.D. Mahinay for the details.
Department of Health Secretary Dr. Ted Herbosa vows to fully implement the Universal Healthcare Law, or UHCL, in the country. The goal is achieved by sustaining the legislation's gains, strengthening health sector strategy interventions, and introducing healthcare reforms. UHCL, or Republic Act 11223, was signed into law in 2019 to provide universal healthcare coverage for all Filipinos. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. named Herbosa as Health Secretary Monday. Meanwhile, Secretary Herbosa appoints Undersecretary Maria Rosario Berhere to oversee all DOH undersecretaries. According to Herbosa, Vergere agrees to help him to achieve his goals with the 5 undersecretaries. The Health Secretary previously served as DOH Undersecretary between 2010 and 2015. JD Mahinay reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology heightens alert level on Mayon volcano from 2 to 3. Randy Bernardino for the details.
The Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, or PHIVOLCS, announces the heightened alert level on Mayon volcano at 12 noon today. In an interview on Net25 program Kapitbahay, PHIVOLCS Director Teresito Bacolcol says the agency recorded 98 rockfall events from Mayon volcano since yesterday until 5 a.m. this morning. The rockfall was higher than the previously recorded 46, a basis to raise the alert level from 2 to 3. Bacolcol adds that PHIVOLCS observed 3 pyroclastic density current events from the volcano.
Ito yung dati natin tinatawag na pyroclastic flow, which is a devastating volcanic phenomenon. Fast-moving po ito, mixture po ito ng hot volcanic gases, ash, and rock fragments that would cascade down sa slope ng vulkan. So ito na nakita natin doon sa summit.
The agency advises for an evacuation to all residents covered by the 6-kilometer radius Permanent Danger Zone, or PDZ.
We recommend that the 6-kilometer radius Permanent Danger Zone, yung mga nakatira doon be evacuated. Dapat evacuate sila due to the danger of pyroclastic density currents. Pwede rin magkaroon ng lava flows, rock falls, and other volcanic hazards.
PHIVOLCS also warns civil aviation authorities to refrain from flying near the said volcano. PHIVOLCS is coordinating with the local government units in Albay to monitor the safety of residents. Meanwhile, Taal and Canlaon volcanoes remain at alert level 1. The agency consistently reminds residents to be aware of the 6-kilometer radius PDZ and the possible escalation of volcanic activities. Randy Bernardino for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The World Bank hiked its 2023 growth forecast for the Philippines to 6% this year. Mikey Swede reports.
The World Bank sees the Philippines' gross domestic product, or GDP, growing 6% this year. In a virtual press conference, World Bank senior economist Ralph Van Doorn, said despite high inflation, they expect resilient domestic demand and tight fiscal conditions to drive growth for the Philippines. The World Bank also retained its growth forecast at 5.9% for the succeeding 2 years. Doorn also explained consumption will be supported by better employment, steady remittances, and better consumer sentiment. Yet, he said downside risks include the possibility of higher than expected global inflation, tighter global financial conditions, and escalation of geopolitical tensions. He also warned the threat of El Niño weather patterns can affect the country's GDP. He said the government should address inflationary pressures through both monetary and non-monetary measures, increase revenue, and implement investment reforms. Doorn also advised the Philippine government to shift to more sustainable energy sources. Mikey Suede, reporting for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Coming up, Quad leaders sign a multi-million-dollar undersea cable project in Micronesia. China urges EU to oppose U.S. economic coercion. And Russian President Vladimir Putin discusses joint projects with Swazi's Crown Prince. Stay tuned for more stories around the globe when we return.
This portion is brought to you by 318 Automart, Arlex Trading and Construction Supplies.
Sama-sama tayong nakikanta, nakipagsaya at nakipag-summer blast. Maraming salamat sa higit na 120,000 na taong nakasama namin. Walang kapantayang energy at init ng suporta na ipinaramdam ninyong lahat sa amin. Hindi rin matatawaran ang galing ng mga performers na nagpasiklab sa isa sa pinakamasasayang gabi dito sa Philippine Sports Stadium. Taos-puso ang pasasalamat namin. Let's always net together, mga Kanet 25, sa susunod na Summer Blast.
Catch the special TV airing on June 10 and June 11, 2023. Follow our social media pages for more updates.
Welcome back to Matanang Agila International. Taiwan activated its defense systems on Thursday after seeing 37 Chinese military aircraft flying into the island's air defense zone. Taiwan's defense ministry said since 5 a.m., J-11 and J-16 fighters, as well as nuclear-capable H-6 bombers, flew into the southwestern corner of its air defense identification zone. Aside from activating their land-based missile system, the ministry also sent aircraft and ships in response to China's latest military drills. China's defense ministry did not immediately respond to a request for comment. But reports say China has completed a second phase of joint air patrols with Russia over the Western Pacific. The said joint drills also prompted national security concerns from Japan and South Korea.
Fijian Prime Minister Sitiveni Rabuka said a police exchange agreement with China was already under review. This indicates that this government could move to cancel the deal outright. During a state visit to New Zealand on Wednesday, Rabuka indicated that the agreement was on ice as deliberations continued. China and Fiji signed a memorandum of understanding in 2011, enabling police officers from the Pacific nation to undergo training in China, while some of their officers would be deployed to Fiji.
We only think military when we cannot achieve stability and unity through diplomacy and good governance. And that's where we tend to succumb to the temptation of who offers better and who offers more. When we can collectively create our own stability, there is no need for us to be looking at who is offering better to us.
Since being voted into power in a general election 6 months ago, Rabuka's coalition government has shown more skepticism about close ties with Beijing. In January, he told local media that he saw no need for the police agreement with China to continue.
Yes, when we came in, we needed to look at what they were doing, what for us. And the thing I said was our systems and our values. If our values and our systems differ, what cooperation can we get from them? We need to look at that again before we decide on whether we go back to it or we continue the way we have had in the past, cooperating with those that have similar democratic values and systems, legislation, law enforcement, and so on.
Japan joins the United States and Australia in the co-signing of a $95 million undersea cable project that will connect East Micronesia island nations to improve networks within the region. The approximately 2,500-kilometer undersea cable will connect the Federated States of Micronesia, Tarawa and Kiribati, and Nauru to the existing cable landing point located in Pohnpei. The announcement comes just over 2 weeks after leaders of the Quad, a security alliance of Japan, the United States, Australia, and India, emphasized the importance of undersea cables as a critical component of communications infrastructure and the foundation for internet connectivity. Quad has stepped up cooperation with the Pacific Islands, apparently to counter efforts by Beijing to expand its security and economic influence in the region.
Beijing says China and the European Union are victims of economic coercion by the United States. China's statement comes after a series of political pressure and bullying from the West. Lithuania wanted to set up a new diplomatic office in Taiwan. Beijing demanded Lithuania to recall its top envoy, stating Lithuania must adhere to the One China principle. The European Union decided to create a trade tool to sanction countries that seek to put pressure on one of its member countries.
中国和欧盟都是美国经济胁迫的受害者。美国公然胁迫欧盟等国家限制对华出口半导体生产设备，这种科技霸凌行径严重冲击半导体产业发展，不仅损害中国欧盟利益，还破坏多边贸易规则，严重冲击世界经济秩序。我们希望欧盟和国际社会一道，共同反对美国的经济胁迫。
Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin says Washington's economic coercion damages the interests of China and the EU. It also undermines multilateral free trade rules and attacks global economic order. Wang and China hope the EU and the international community will work together to oppose U.S. economic coercion.
First, to reaffirm our support for Ukraine. J'appelle tous les États.
The European Commission says it is launching legal action against Poland over its creation of a panel probing Russian influence. Poland wanted to set up a commission to investigate alleged Russian influence on the country's internal security between 2007 and 2022.
Lastly, we discussed the situation in Poland, and the College agreed to start an infringement procedure by sending a letter of formal notice in relation to the new law on the State Committee for Examination of Russian Influence.
The European Union, or EU, claims the panel could be used to target candidates from opposing parties without due process. EU Commissioner for Justice Didier Reynders says the results of the investigation may lead to extrajudicially depriving citizens of the right to be elected to public office. The EU further says Poland's new law raises concerns about going through an investigation without a fair trial.
Head of Kherson Oblast Vladimir Saldo disputes Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's claim that Russia was responsible for the collapse of Kakhovka Dam. Saldo claims a missile attack by Ukraine had hit the dam. From Donetsk Republic, Russia, RT correspondent Steve Sweeney reports.
So the local mayor has described this as a terrorist act committed by Ukrainian forces, and the Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, we're just hearing, has blamed Russia for the attack, and he's made a referral to the United Nations Security Council. So conflicting reports there. Now, just to give some kind of idea of the scale of this hydroelectrical dam, it was built in 1956. It's a Soviet-era dam, so it's incredibly robust, but it's 30 meters high and 2 miles long, and it contains water roughly equivalent to Great Salt Lake in Utah. So it's a pretty big dam, and it supplies not only the local population, but also the people of Crimea, but perhaps more crucially, it supplies coolant water for the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. Now, Russian officials there say that there is no risk and that the situation's under control. The local areas are at imminent risk of flooding. Evacuation operations are underway. It affects something like 80 settlements. We know that 30 homes in the immediate region are at risk and have been evacuated. Emergency services are on the scene trying to fix the problem and to ensure that people in the area are safe. Now, of course, this comes after Sunday's attacks by Ukrainian forces. They tried to breach Russian defences in 5 areas in the Donetsk region. They were unsuccessful. They were repelled by Russian forces with huge losses, of course. These some 16 tanks, up to 300 Ukrainian soldiers and 24 armoured fighting vehicles, including these 3 Bradley vehicles supplied by the United States. Now, of course, there's been a lot of rumour and a lot of speculation that this could be the start of the long-awaited spring, what was a spring offensive by the Ukrainian forces.
In related news, the World Bank's Managing Director for Operations, Anna Bierde, says they will conduct a quick assessment of damage to the Nova Kakhovka Dam. Bierde says the destruction of the dam has many serious consequences for essential service delivery and the broader environment. Bierde also reiterates the World Bank's support for Ukraine. She also assures Ukrainian Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal that the new damage assessment would build on the bank's previous analysis of damage to Kyiv's infrastructure and buildings.
Russian President Vladimir Putin spoke with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to discuss energy prices. Kremlin said that the 2 leaders also plan measures to further build up trade and economic ties. Kremlin disclosed Putin and the Saudi Crown Prince also paid attention to OPEC Plus oil cooperation. The phone call follows the prince's meeting with the United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who visited Saudi Arabia on Tuesday.
Indonesian President Joko Widodo met Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim and Malaysian King Sultan Abdullah during a series of working visits to Malaysia. Widodo has called for better collaboration with its neighboring country of Malaysia to fight what he called discrimination against their countries. The European Union passed a law this year banning imports of commodities linked to deforestation, a move that is expected to hurt palm oil exports for the region. Indonesia and Malaysia together account for about 85% of global palm oil exports.
Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni has traveled to Tunisia to discuss the issue of illegal migration. Meloni's visit follows a call between her and President Kais Saied earlier this week to address border surveillance and repatriation of undocumented migrants who cross the Mediterranean. There has been an increase in racially charged assaults on migrants in Tunisia since President Saied went on an incendiary tirade last Sunday. Meloni has warned the European Union that they could face a huge wave of asylum seekers. Tunisian media says her visit will put more pressure on the country to play the role of Europe's Coast Guard.
Questo, parlare di una cooperazione non paternalistica, non predatoria, ma paritaria, che consenta a ciascuno di difendere il proprio interesse nazionale cooperando in una collaborazione che offre opportunità per tutti. C'è da questo punto di vista e a questo proposito anche l'ipotesi che abbiamo discusso col Presidente Saied di una conferenza internazionale a Roma sul tema della migrazione e dello sviluppo per cercare.
The drafting of the new Chilean constitution has begun. A new constitutional council dominated by conservative parties has begun the process.
Estoy convencida que más allá de nuestras diferencias, si ponemos a las personas y a Chile por delante, que actuamos con seriedad, este proceso puede ser exitoso y contribuye a terminar con la incertidumbre e inestabilidad que ha marcado el devenir de nuestro país en los últimos años.
This has been the second attempt to replace the current document that dates back to the late dictator Augusto Pinochet's tenure. The new council is a stark contrast from the predominantly independent and left-wing assembly that preceded it. They effectively produced a draft that was overwhelmingly rejected by voters. The process will be shorter and more limited than the previous one, which was marred by controversies surrounding extreme proposals and assembly members. The completed text will then go to a national mandatory vote in December.
Lo que la ciudadanía espera hoy, un proceso de colaboración en donde las distintas partes sean capaces de ceder cuando es necesario y de encontrar los puntos comunes en búsqueda de lo mejor para Chile.
Colombia's President Gustavo Petro has urged the country's Congress to approve crucial reforms in the areas of health, labor, and pensions. Speaking at a gathering of union members and supporters, Petro emphasized the significance of these reforms in safeguarding the rights of the Colombian people. The president's proposed health bill has faced significant challenges within his own congressional bloc, one of the few upcoming challenges of his administration. He emphasized the need to guarantee the rights of the Colombian people by improving access, increasing salaries, and combating corruption. Efforts to shelve the health bill have emerged due to allegations of campaign finance irregularities, prompting the lower house to withhold discussions on the amendments. With the debate on legislative reforms on hold, the government is considering the possibility of shelving the decision to the next legislative session on the 20th of July, casting a shadow of doubt on the timeline given for the implementation of certain provisions.
During its final briefing on the pandemic, the European vaccines watchdog warns that COVID-19 remains a threat, even though it is no longer a global health emergency. Rosel Feria reports.
The European Medicines Agency, or EMA, says it is stopping its regular COVID briefings. These briefings, for nearly 3 years, were keenly watched for the latest developments on badly needed jabs and treatments. The Amsterdam-based regulator says, however, it would keep up its work on jabs for new variants of the disease. One may recall that COVID-19 has killed millions of people and wreaked economic havoc. EMA Vaccines Chief Marco Cavalieri says the virus is and will remain a threat, especially for the most vulnerable.
COVID-19 caused and continues to cause a significant strain on public health systems, especially during the winter months when transmission of the virus comes on top of other seasonal respiratory illnesses.
The World Health Organization declared on May 5 that the COVID pandemic no longer constitutes a global health emergency. Rosel Feria for Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
A top United Nations official stressed that peacekeepers should withdraw from the war-torn Central African country as soon as possible. UN Undersecretary General for Peacekeeping Operations Jean-Pierre Lacroix warned the Congolese state to rebuff its security efforts in response to armed groups plaguing the area.
Les capacités de l'État congolais, notamment des forces de sécurité, forces armées, forces de police, ne sont pas en mesure de répondre aux impératifs de protection des civils, notamment puisqu'on a parlé de l'Ituri dans la région et vous avez parlé, je crois, de Djougou, dans des provinces de l'Est du pays.
The UN peacekeeping force in the Democratic Republic of Congo, known as MONUSCO, is one of the largest and most expensive efforts for the UN, with an annual budget of $1 billion since its inception in 1999. The force has a current strength of about 16,000 uniformed personnel, mainly deployed in Congo's east, a mineral-rich region that militias have plagued for 3 decades. Many critics have called out the UN security efforts in the area for their failure to prevent violent outbreaks in the eastern Congo, along with the dozens of casualties racked up during the anti-UN protests last year. Lacroix also voiced his frustration towards the Congolese administration, stating that the multitude of displaced people within the region have been receiving protection almost exclusively from UN troops, requiring their forces to be stretched thin across other border security efforts.
Mais également les efforts régionaux, en particulier les déploiements régionaux, ceux qui sont déjà en cours, comme la force de l'Afrique, de la communauté de l'Afrique orientale, éventuellement celui de l'Angola, dont l'objectif est clairement défini par les autorités angolaises en liaison avec les autorités congolaises, superviser le précantonnement et le cantonnement des éléments du M23 lorsque ces opérations seront réalisées, et enfin le déploiement annoncé d'une force de la SADC.
Despite this, Lacroix says that the transition needs to be carried out in a gradual and responsible manner. He stressed that there needs to be a rise in strength in the security capacity of the state.
Ensuite, soutien à la protection des civils. Je l'ai dit, j'ai rappelé l'action critique, encore une fois, pour des centaines de milliers de civils de protection de la MONUSCO. Nous allons poursuivre évidemment ce travail et en même temps travailler avec les autorités congolaises pour que, je l'ai dit, le processus de montée en puissance de l'État congolais nous permette, nous, de diminuer graduellement cette présence de la MONUSCO, mais le faire de manière responsable. Encore une fois, je le souligne, il ne faut pas qu'il y ait de vide sécuritaire qui serait fatal à ces populations.
Authorities say an explosion has killed 11 people at a funeral service of Nisar Ahmad Ahmadi in Faizabad. Ahmadi was an acting provincial governor in Afghanistan. The blast also injured 30 people. Authorities are now investigating the motive of the suspect. Up next, a UN court rules a Rwandan genocide suspect unfit to stand trial. Archaeologists find human remains at a military base in Uruguay. And Hawaii's Kilauea volcano rumbles to life again. Please don't go away. We've got more stories when Mata ng Agila International returns.
This portion is brought to you by Final Match Security and Investigation Agency.
1 out of 3 sa ating kabataan ang nakakaranas ng online bullying. Bakit nga ba patuloy na tumataas ang insidente ng cyberbullying?
Mas mahirap talaga po siyang ma-monitor. Pwedeng gumamit ng ibang account, pwedeng anonymous.
So dahil daw yun sa social media, mapapadali talaga ang pambubuli.
Ang cancel culture is the new form of cyberbullying. Sometimes in-attack na nila ang personality.
Maraming takot magsumbong. Maraming din hindi alam kung saan pwede magsumbong. Lalo na pagdating sa cyberbullying.
Lumalala na nga ba ang cyberbullying sa Pilipinas? Mag-reality check tayo.
Panalo tayo pag together, walang talo pag together. Let's stand together sa Net25.
This portion is brought to you by Robic Builders, Quezon City Motor Vehicle Inspection Center.
4.9 magnitude earthquake strikes Haiti, claiming at least 4 lives and injuring 36. The casualties add to the initial 51 recorded deaths from the flood they experienced during the weekend. Authorities say several children were rushed to the hospital after 2 houses collapsed from the tremors. According to a United States aid organization, Haiti is evidently getting hit by disasters. The organization notes that Haiti's citizens had no time to recover from previous disasters, only to be hit by other calamities in a matter of days.
A United Nations court in The Hague has ruled aging Rwandan genocide suspect Felicien Kabuga is unfit to stand trial. Instead, they will adopt an alternative finding procedure that resembles a trial as closely as possible. The 90-year-old suspect went on trial in September last year as prosecutors were accusing him of urging ethnic Hutus to kill their rival Tutsis. Kabuga refused to appear in court or remotely via video link from a wheelchair at the court's detention center. The court put the trial on hold in March over Kabuga's health concerns. Kabuga was arrested in Paris in 2020 after decades on the run. He has pleaded not guilty to charges of being involved in the 1994 slaughter in which 800,000 people died. Kabuga is one of the last Rwandan genocide suspects to face justice. 62 others were convicted by the tribunal so far.
In northern Afghanistan, a minibus crash claims the lives of 25 people, including 9 children and 12 women. Police say the car plunged into a deep pit in a mountainous area in Saripul province. The operatives add that it was the minibus driver's carelessness that brought them to the perilous situation. Authorities say the passengers were returning from a wedding.
In Russia, 2 cars of a cargo train carrying industrial wood got derailed. Station authorities say they managed to keep up with the routine train schedule despite the accident which occurred at the Ufa sorting station that morning. The station serves as a vital transportation hub for both passengers and cargo. No injuries were reported. Local officials say investigators are still figuring out the cause of the incident.
Mexican authorities said that human remains discovered in bags in a ravine last week belonged to 8 call center employees that were reported missing. The gruesome discovery was made last week at the bottom of a 40-meter ravine in the municipality of Zapopan. Authorities had launched a search for 2 women and 6 men who had been reported missing since May 20. Authorities did not indicate how the victims have died. The missing person reports for each one of the employees had been made separately on different days, but investigators found that they all worked at the same call center. Initial inquiries suggested the call center could have been involved in illegal activities.
Human remains have been found outside a military base near Uruguay's capital of Montevideo. Archaeologists discovered a skeleton less than 100 meters from where the remains of victims of the South America country's former dictatorship have been found in recent years. Timon Lee has more.
The paratrooper base near Montevideo in Uruguay served as detention and torture center for political opponents of the military dictatorship which ruled the country from 1973 to 1985. A government official says it's likely the remains are those of a detainee who disappeared during the dictatorship. So far, 5 bodies have been found, the first in 2006 and the last in 2019 before this week's discovery. A total of 197 dissidents and political prisoners disappeared during the regime. Timon Lee for Matanang, Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
A minister said that Kenya will convert the Cult Massacre Forest into a national memorial site. The announcement was made after mass graves were discovered in Shakahola Forest for various cult practices in Kenya. Kenya's government will convert the forest into a national memorial so that Kenyans and the world will not forget what happened. Meanwhile, investigators began a third phase of exhumation on Tuesday, discovering 9 more bodies to take the death toll to 251. Since the spread of cult practices, 95 people have been rescued and 35 were arrested, including cult leader Paul Mackenzie. The horrific saga led President William Ruto to set up a commission of inquiry into the deaths and a task force to review regulations governing religious bodies.
Indonesia is deporting a detained Australian surfer. The decision was made after he launched a drunken assault in the country's most conservative province. Danica Lee tells us more.
23-year-old Bodhi Manny Risby Jones from Noosa in southern Queensland was facing 5 years in prison. This after he attacked several people in April on the surf island of Simulue. The Australian tourist, however, will return home. He apologized and paid compensation to a wounded victim. The immigration office in Mealubo City in West Aceh says Risby Jones is currently in detention, awaiting to be returned to his home, Australia. Ultra-conservative Aceh prohibits alcohol. Aceh is a province granted special autonomous status. It is the only region in the world's most populous Muslim-majority country that imposes Islamic law. Officials say that the Australian surfer appeared naked from his local resort. He then started to hit a passerby, including a fisherman on a motorcycle, throwing him off and wounding him. That victim of the alleged attack agreed to forgive him, allowing the case to be dropped. Risby Jones paid 250 million rupiah, or over $16,000, to the fisherman. This, in part, to cover medical costs. In a message to Australians, Risby Jones says he made a fool of himself and it was shown publicly worldwide. He says, respect the rules. Danica Lee for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
A moose was rescued from a well at a factory in Siberia. Rescuers struggle with how the animal will be pulled up from the well. Rescuers first attempted to sedate the moose with tranquilizers to extract it from the well. However, their methods were rendered ineffective. According to local officials, the adrenaline present in the animal's system makes it hard to sedate. The rescuers removed the top part of the well to place a harness on the moose and lift it out using a crane. Authorities say that the animal, now named Vasily, is safe and is back in the wild. Consumers will face higher borrowing costs as Canada's central bank hiked its key interest rate by 1/4 percentage point. Thomas I. Likeness reports.
The Bank of Canada rate now stands at 4 3/4%. Wednesday's increase means it will cost more to borrow money. It affects a number of credit vehicles, mortgages, lines of credit, personal loans, and for some people, that could delay big-ticket purchases. We're talking about things like a new home or a new car. And that's just what the central bank had in mind when it increased rates. Economists say the economy has to be slowed down to tame inflation. Demand for goods and services has to be reduced. Inflation in April inched up to 4.4% from 4.3% a month earlier, and although that increase is marginal, the bank wants to nip further inflationary increases in the bud. It forecasts inflation to drop to 3% by summer, with the end target being 2%. In Edmonton, Canada, Thomas I. Likeness for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Hawaii's Kilauea volcano has rumbled to life again. The mountain began erupting Wednesday morning, spewing red-hot lava. Irvin Arquiza reports.
Kilauea is one of the world's most active volcanoes. What you see here is a time-lapse of fissures that have opened up at the base of a crater on the volcano. The activity is all within the confines of the Hawaii Volcanoes National Park and away from population centers. The big concern is the high levels of volcanic gas that is being released. As the mountain emits sulfur dioxide, the gas reacts with the air to form a visible haze known as volcanic smog. This can create breathing difficulties for people and animals. It can also affect crops. As well, silvers of volcanic glass can irritate the skin and cause eye problems. Kilauea is one of 6 active volcanoes on the Hawaiian Islands. Irvin Arquiza for Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
In Kenya, farmers struggle to staff out lions that prey on their livestock amid drought. Conservationists urge the farmers to dissuade the killing of lions as compensation for lost livestock. But the farmers argue that it is incomparable to the value of their livestock. Wildlife authorities say lions are being forced to search outside national parks for their food and water. This makes the carnivores search by the areas where herding locals reside, which fight back in retaliation. Coming right up, CNN Chief Executive Chris Lick is out of the network. Football superstar Lionel Messi moves to MLS. And rapper Tupac Shakur receives star on Hollywood Walk of Fame. Catch the latest in business, sports, and entertainment. Matanang Agila International will be back.
Welcome back to Matanang Agila International. The United States Securities and Exchange Commission sues Coinbase for allegedly operating illegally. The SEC argues that Coinbase should have registered with them as it has acted as a broker, exchange, and clearing agency for investments. The U.S. regulator also claims Coinbase made billions when it acted as a middleman for cryptocurrency buyers and sellers. SEC also accused the platform of not giving investors lawful protections while acting as a broker. But Coinbase argues the SEC has not been transparent in how it regulates cryptocurrencies. Chris Licht is ousted as the CEO and chairman of the cable news network CNN. This move could be attributed to their ratings taking a nosedive due to their controversial town hall series and network direction. The executive swept into the top job with ambitious plans to remake the cable news giant. Licht rose through the media industry ranks as a television producer and took the reins at CNN in February of 2022. In a statement announcing Licht's dismissal, Warner Brothers Discovery chief David Zaslav commented on how his job was never going to be easy, especially during a tumultuous time for the political climate and global development. When Licht took over CNN, he saw sought to differentiate himself from his predecessor who had publicly clashed with former President Donald Trump. Sources say that he was just following a mandate from higher-ups in attempting to move the news brand to the political center and make it more palatable to both conservative viewers and GOP newsmakers. Former ByteDance executive claims members of the ruling Communist Party tracked Hong Kong protesters using data held by the company. Former engineering head of ByteDance in the United States, Yin Dao Yu, says those same people had access to U.S. user data. Yu filed a legal complaint citing the involvement of members of the CCP. ByteDance denies the accusations made by the former executive. The company slams Yu's accusations, noting that they were baseless complaints. According to Charles Jung, Yu's lawyer, the former executive decided to raise the accusation due to being perturbed by the recent congressional testimony of TikTok CEO. To experience flying like a bird is the concept behind a new and innovative FPV, or first-person view drone, which allows users to upgrade their cinematography. Stephanie Mayo tells us more.
DJI Avatar, an FPV or first-person view drone, is the talk of the town in the world of drones. The gadget comes with a VR-like pair of goggles with the drone's camera directly placed in front of a user's eyes and gives you the sensation of flying, as if you're inside the drone itself. With a gimbaled 4K camera that takes excellent aerial videos, it is a novel drone. Small, light, and durable, it is also crash-proof. However, priced at almost $1,500, this gadget is mainly for those with a disposable income and for those with perfect eyesight. While it has a built-in technology to correct your vision, it is still a hassle when one cannot wear prescription glasses underneath the goggles. It's also not as fast as other FPV drones, but it can maneuver in narrow spaces. While the colors can also be a bit oversaturated, the video captures are generally sharp. The DJI Avatar has some limitations, but using it is a ton of fun, but pricey. Stephanie Mayo for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Football superstar Lionel Messi announces that he will join Major League Soccer team Inter Miami. This comes after Messi said on Wednesday that he is choosing the U.S. as his next destination over Barcelona and Saudi Arabia. In a statement, the 35-year-old Argentinian said that the decision of going to Miami is something he has left to do. Messi played for Barcelona in 2021 before moving to Paris Saint-Germain last 2022. He is a 7-time Ballon d'Or winner and is expected to earn individual accolades once more after leading Argentina to World Cup in Qatar in December. In the 2023 NBA Finals, the Denver Nuggets win Game 3 against the Miami Heat, 109-94. It was a historic night for the Nuggets as Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray led the team to victory. They both recorded a triple-double performance, the first time it was done in the NBA Finals, done by a duo. Jokic had 32 points, 21 rebounds, and 10 assists, while Murray added 34 points, 10 assists, and 10 rebounds. Game 4 will be on Saturday, where the Miami Heat tries to tie the series at 2-2. Lionsgate Productions has released the trailer for Expendables 4. After 9 years, the Expendables franchise has returned with Sylvester Stallone's Barney Ross ready to lead his band of mercenaries. The trailer shows a team of newcomers and old-timers bonding over guns, explosions, and lots of action. Franchise veterans Jason Statham, Dolph Lundgren, and Randy Couture will all reprise their roles alongside Stallone. While notable new cast includes Megan Fox, Tony Jaa, Iko Uwais, Andy Garcia, and rapper 50 Cent. Directed by Scott Wow, Expendables 4 will be showing on September 22. Legendary hip-hop star, actor, and poet Tupac Shakur receives a posthumous star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. This move was unanimously praised as Machiavelli was always recognized for his contribution to the arts and activism for racial equality. Pac's sister Sakia said Shakur was there to receive the plaque alongside renowned radio host Kurt Big Boy Alexander. Seth spoke about several things during her speech, including his life and how it was always his dream to one day have his name on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. The Pac is one of only 12 rap artists to grace the Hollywood landmark with a star, a fitting gesture for hip-hop music's 50th anniversary. In addition to his talents on the mic, Tupac has been applauded for his advocacy for Black Power, which he often discussed in his songs and movies. In May, Tupac was honored by his hometown of Oakland, California, whose city council voted to rename a street Tupac Shakur Way to honor his legacy.
In France, a tightrope walker showcases his extreme talent by crossing a rope suspended 50 meters off the ground. Artist Nathan Paulin performs his undaunted stunt above ground in the La Rochelle port. Spectators gather as they lift their heads to witness the breathtaking walk. Paulin holds a world record for the longest distance on a slackline crossing 2,200 meters last year. In 2014, he won his first length record in the Lyon region. Oh, wow. And to send you off, here's a quote from two-time Emmy Award-winning actor Eric Stone Street. There are dreamers and there are realists in this world. The dreamers need the realists to keep them from soaring too close to the sun. And the realists, well, without the dreamers, they might not ever get off the ground.
That's really interesting. What do you think you are, a realist or a dreamer?
I'm still trying to strike a balance between being a dreamer and being a realist.
Yes, it's a good balance of both. And that's a wrap for tonight's news. Catch the latest updates on our social media channels. I am Gianna Llanes.
And I am Nina Richie Alago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.